more than any neg or compliment, like that would get my interest if somebody was hitting on me. Like, girl comes up and he's like, "You want to drive a car on Mars?" I'm like, "You're gonna steal my kidneys," but yes,
Yeah.
I do.
As long as I got shotgun though. Welcome to Theoretical Nonsense, the Big Bang Theory watch-along podcast. No PhD required.
We're the podcast that recaps all the episodes of The Big Bang Theory. No spoilers.
So hop into your favorite spot.
Make yourself a grasshopper.
And enjoy the ride. Hello there, Ryan.
Hello, Rob.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great because we just watched the Lizard Spock Expansion.
Yeah.
For any new listeners out there, I'm Rob, and this is my co-host Ryan. We are Theoretical Nonsense, the podcast that recaps, reviews, and deep dives facts from the Big Bang Theory, which we call IQ points. I've seen the series multiple times, and this is Ryan's first time watching. So we do our best to do no spoilers. And Ryan has also been told that he's very similar to being a Sheldon, so we keep a point tally of how close Ryan is to being Sheldon.
And last time, the last episode put me over for being not like Sheldon. I'm at 42 points not like Sheldon, 38 like Sheldon. And honestly, just spoiler alert, this episode didn't have much Sheldon in it. So not many Sheldon points to add up this episode. More non-Sheldon points that I related to.
All right, that's good. You're separating yourself from from being Sheldon.
Although I fear I might be more like Howard now, which is its own issue. Yeah.
So how many eye patches do you have in your closet?
2.
All right, well, a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We have an Instagram account at Theoretical Nonsense Pod. Check us out on YouTube now. Like and subscribe. And email us at theoreticalnonsensepod@gmail.com. And don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Apple, and we'll give you a shout-out.
Yeah.
And speaking of emails, we actually got 3 emails in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, actually, when you include, there was a reply back and forth, so 4 total. And that's like more emails than we've had the whole year we've been doing this.
I know, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of like, it's kind of fun.
I can't believe people are actually listening.
Yeah. So I think I talked to Ryan a little bit about this in the beginning. We're going to start with the emails because we do have some things that we wanted to address. So we got some good constructive criticism. We'll start with that. Then we got like a really good email from another person talking about an old IQ points and correcting us, actually. So it's kind of nice to get a little bit more context on an old IQ points. And then we also just got a really nice email from another person. So yeah. I think we'll start with I'm not going to say it's a bad one because I think it was really good. I think it's from Rick. And he sent us an email saying, "Love the show with notes." And honestly, after really thinking about it, I really appreciate all the constructive criticism because I know it seems like he means well.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. And I think we as surprised I am to be getting these emails, like, I know 4 emails isn't a huge number of emails, but starting this a year ago, I figured we'd be doing this and kind of talking to each other and just kind of a fun little thing. And getting people to email us and talk to us and know that they're actually listening. It's great to hear this feedback and consider, how do we want to take this show? How are we going to perceive it? Because it's becoming a real entity out in the world, right?
Yeah. We're getting quite a bit of downloads. We're on YouTube now. Have been getting some views, but we're getting a little bit of traction.
And it makes sense. It takes people a while to go out there and find it. And technically our previous episodes are going to be there forever, online. So more and more people are going to download and watch. You got to be ready.
Yeah. Well, I know we said in the past that we would read your entire email, but this one's actually kind of long. How do you feel about just summarizing it a little bit? Or we'll go point by point. How about that?
Yeah, I think point by point. These long emails, I feel like not necessarily written with intent to be read, but to be shared and discussed. So I think point by point works. If not, you guys can email me back and us back and say, no, I want you to read the whole thing, and we will. We'll make it happen.
You will read this whole thing.
I emailed you, so you read it all. Okay, yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's see. He starts by saying that he loves the podcast and he enjoys our friendship. So thank you. Let's see. So the first point that he mentioned what was our release schedule. So I guess one thing, a little bit of context on our schedules is I know he means well because I was actually in the YouTube space for like a really long time for the last couple of years. I actually honestly, because of this email, I actually decided to stop my YouTubing. I told you some big things happened.
Yeah.
So I found that I've been spreading myself way too thin. I have a full-time job, just like Ryan. We have careers. He's not a newborn anymore. He's an infant, but I actually have a baby to take care of. I have a wife that has her needs and everything like that too. So I want to keep up that relationship and everything.
I
And
figure
then
until he's sleeping through the night, he's a newborn. Until you get a full night's sleep, he's newborn.
Yeah, but then I noticed that I've been just kind of spreading myself way too thin, and I've been half-assing way too many things just to kind of crank things out. And I have a really big problem of not, I guess I have a really hard time quitting things because once I'm in it, I'm in it. So I've been YouTubing for about 2 years, and it's built some really good traction, but not really where I wanted it to go. And at the end of the day, when I looked at like which one I wanted to prioritize, I chose this one. So Rick, you win.
You win.
I chose this podcast over the other project because honestly, due to circumstances with my other channel, it's like, you know what? I think we can just take a very extended break. Maybe I'll go back to it. Maybe I won't. We'll see. But I know I wanted to put my eggs in this basket. And that has to do with some of the comments that he wrote later on in the email. But back to the release schedule, right now we release twice a month, every other week. And like I said, it's just because Ryan and we have full-time jobs. We have a lot of other obligations. Posting weekly is a bit of a challenge, but it's something that Ryan and I can definitely talk about in the future. Yeah. I wouldn't mind doing it now that it's funny, like once I scrap that other project, I'm like, look at all this free time I have.
Wow, I got time.
Of course I should play with my child, but you know.
Oh yeah, the child. Oh
no. I guess I should give him a little bit of love. But it's something that we'll have to talk about. I don't know. I can't speak for Ryan, so I don't really know what your schedule's like. I know the every other week has been working with you. Maybe we can talk offline about it.
Yeah, we can talk about it. I think that taking this realistically, doing once a week is probably a healthy choice. It's definitely getting into some logistical things that we have to talk about. Even like we've been going out of town and trying to figure out how do we manage a trip on 2 weeks, right? So how could we do that with 1 week intervals? But I think we could do it. It's just we'd have to map it out. And I think doing this for a year, we've kind of laid the groundwork that we understand how this goes. So it would be easier than I think starting out, we wouldn't have been able to handle once a week. It would be too overloading, too overwhelming, and I probably would have run away with my tail between my legs. Yeah.
Well, he did give us a little breakdown, and we understand that the more content you put out, the more fans you'll find, the more you'll get more repeat audience and everything like that. And he gave us a good what's it called? What would you call it? He gave us a good example of how did this get made? The podcast that rewatches bad movies. So every other week they'll put out a movie review, not really review, but like a breakdown, a little shit talking and everything. I love that podcast. By the way, I don't know if you've listened to it, but it's fucking great.
I haven't listened to it yet.
It's great. I actually, in my car just earlier, I was listening to the Jason X one.
Oh.
How terrible was that movie? But
uh,
anyways,
I
um,
loved it because it was so bad. So yeah.
but um, yeah, so they do a movie every other week, and then in between every other week, alternating, they'll actually just do other content and everything like that. So maybe we'll have to think of something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah,
And
and then
Rick mentioned, and I don't want to jump ahead, but I really did like him saying that this could take like 12 years to get through. And that's something we need to consider because I plan on living 12 years, but 12 years on just this one show might be a lot, especially if we decide to go on to Young Sheldon. And I think the big news this week was we heard that Chuck Lorre is considering making a new show in the Big Bang universe. So, if we did ever want to tackle other fun shows, and I haven't seen any of Young Sheldon either. It's still going, right?
yep,
Yeah. So, you know, we we have a lot on our plates that we could tackle, and if we realistically wanted to get to those, 12 years probably isn't realistic. We need to actually get going and do at least once a week. Cut that down by, you know.
yeah, we'll have to figure something out. Like
Hmm.
we'll have to take a deep look at our schedules. And I got my blessing from my wife to now that I've dropped the other project to just kind of lean into this one, and she's all for it. So at least that's what she says now. I got it. I should get that in writing.
So what I'm understanding is that I don't have a project to drop, so I'm
You
gonna
don't
have
need
to
a day
drop
job, right?
Kelsey.
Bye,
Kelsey, we
Felicia.
have life choices here. Life is a series of compromises. I have the podcast and you. One's gotta go.
Well, it was a fun ride, but
It's a fun ride, but, you know.
all right. And then he actually caught something that we actually talked about last time too. Remember how I mentioned that we need a new intro? I've actually
Yeah.
known this for a while because it's like crap. This is like the whole half-assing thing where it's like it didn't even click in. It's one of those things like I saw it, I processed it, but it didn't click in. I was like, crap, our intro's wrong.
I think it's hilarious that it was like right after we got done with the podcast last time. You're like, "Oh yeah, I remember we need to fix this," and then we got the email like, "Holy shit, somebody
Like
saw it."
someone's paying attention. So we will fix that, and
It's gonna be fixed.
hopefully you just heard our new intro. So let's remember to record that today.
Yeah.
And then he had a little bit of a quibble on some of our IQ points that they weren't very interesting or very unrelated to the show, and that doesn't really bother me. You know what? As a content creator of this podcast, I'm actually okay doing these really weird deep dives. He actually specifically pointed out the Disneyland one in Pork Chop Indeterminacy. And I actually, honestly, that was actually one of my favorite ones. It just took me through like this really weird spiral, and I just wanted to share it.
And
Because some of these IQ points, as we go through the episode, we kind of just pick and choose what we feel is interesting enough to just start researching, and then it kind of just spirals.
there's been a couple where it's like that doesn't really pan out and we just kind of drop it, or I know there's been a couple where we're like, yeah, we can't articulate how to explain that, so we're not going to discuss it, we give up on it. But you know, I enjoyed that IQ point, but it is something where it's weird because there's no like set reasoning for like what bits of pieces of information do we discuss, so we're like just picking randomly stuff that jumps out to us, and it's interesting what sticks and what doesn't stick. But yeah, I'm always thinking like maybe I shouldn't be researching this, maybe it's not important enough, but sometimes it's still, like you said, we spiral into something that gains interesting traction. And yeah, I like the Disneyland weddings, so but it's something to think about too. How do we construct these IQ points, and do we keep them related to how close to the show and to the characters do we keep them? So something that we're going to keep in mind.
Yeah, and something to remember is that Ryan and I do not coordinate at all on
Yeah.
this. We do the research on our own, and then we just dive into this, and that's something that I actually really like, because whenever Ryan does an IQ point that I didn't think of, I'm like, I love that little shock value. Like, oh, I didn't even think about that.
I like it when we find different information that disagrees. It's like, holy shit. Like,
Yeah.
oh, we're both wrong. We're both right. I don't know.
Google, you have failed us.
Wikipedia, why do I trust you?
Yep. And next he did I can tell, Rick, that you must be a Star Trek fan. And I will say that I never said that I didn't like Star Trek. I've been fully transparent that I just don't know where to start. And when I started with the original series, I thought it was a little on the strange side, just because it's super ahead of its time. But then like watching it, I'm like, wow, this is like really, really out there. Like, this is kind of crazy. And I just couldn't get into it. It doesn't mean that I don't like Star Trek or I'm not willing to give it a chance. So this is actually a perfect opportunity for, if you're a Star Trek fan, please tell me, where should I start? Please don't say original.
Star Trek movie one. And this episode actually is going to talk a little bit about the highest ranking Star Trek films. So
Yeah.
That's going to be discussed.
We will be discussing that.
You know, honestly, that point in the email made me think of something. I think it's kind of strange. I'm not going to say unrealistic, but for all four of these friends to be fans of Star Wars, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, and quite a few other fandoms, that most fans that I meet are pretty diehard one way or another. They love Star Trek or they love Star Wars. They love Lord of the Rings or they love Star Trek. But it's weird that all four of these love all of them. And yeah, I don't know. I'm curious what other people have to say, because the people I meet who have watched Star Wars are like, I will never watch Star Trek, and people who watch Star Trek like really shun the people who like Star Wars. So
Yeah, it's really challenging to know someone that has seen and appreciates and likes all of them all at the same time.
mhm.
So that's what's great about this community too, is that there's so many different opinions
Yeah,
on it. And you will even see in this episode, like, even though they like Star Trek, they have very different opinions of which movie is good and which one isn't.
definitely. Yeah, and I found that, I don't want to ruin anything, but I have something to say about the movies and how they're ranked on Rotten Tomatoes. So
I
yeah,
did the same thing.
same thing. We're gonna talk.
Twinsies. And last couple of things that he mentioned, and this is one of those things where I feel like we just ended up half-assing a couple of things. Like, as we get caught up in our life, we kind of just plow through a little bit of research and the whole like pronunciation of Ugmadala. So honestly, I'm not that sorry on that, because I learned that from Waterboy.
You know what? I kind of want to go back and listen to this episode, because my local brewery has a beer named this, and it's kind of an ongoing joke, and they've had it for a couple years. So I don't know what I would have said, or if it didn't click that this is the same word of the beer that they have, but they claim it's amygdala, and I always say I'll take the Amadala Ding Dong beer, and they're like, no, Ryan, no. And I'm like, my gula, and they're like, no.
And that's how you got blacklisted.
That's why I'm not allowed at any breweries in the Seattle area. All right, not that bad, but you know what I mean. But yeah, anyways, I've always heard it's amygdala, and I'm I just look at that word and start to remember I have dyslexia, and I'm pretty sure I just kind of yeah, I'm kind of curious of how I pronounce it, because it's definitely the name of a pretty darn good beer out at the brewery. I think it's one of their best, and again, it's kind of an inside joke that I have no idea how to pronounce it there either. So
Do you really have dyslexia?
Never been proven to, medically diagnosed, but yeah. I read things and they are not what they say. They kind of scramble together, and I'll be reading out loud and people stop me and be like, Ryan, that's not what that said. And look back like, whoa, I just like mixed up 3 words and assumed they meant something else. But
It makes your profession all the more impressive.
I appreciate that. And the
Yeah.
interesting thing is the best editors in the writing world that I've met have dyslexia. And from my
Wow.
understanding is it forces them to scrutinize so much and thoroughly that they're able to not overcompensate, but compensate for their shortcomings by taking the extra time. And it takes extra time, but they go more thoroughly than somebody who uh, may not deal with dyslexia so much and may scan over stuff a little bit more quickly without necessarily regarding or editing everything as thoroughly. And that's not the case with everyone. It's just that the best editors I've seen have dealt with dyslexia, and I know that they take that they go the extra mile in revising and editing work. So I always think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Oh,
I
and
also
one.
fake a lot of
Oh.
what I do.
You just gotta stay one step. It's like parenting. You just stay one step ahead of your kid.
Yeah. Just pretend like yeah, I meant to do that.
Well, last thing that Rick mentioned was something that we kind of overlooked in the tangerine factor. He mentioned why, because we had our own opinion of why Sheldon was learning Mandarin or why he even really didn't need to. But he brings up a good point that Sheldon wants to know if pretty much if the owner is talking shit. So if he actually can hear him speak, he'll know what he's saying. So honestly, it was a bit of an oversight, I think.
Yeah, I think that was a
I didn't
really
even think
fair
about that.
point. I
Yeah.
wasn't picking up on it in the episode, but I think that's a perfect reason to and people do talk shit in other languages, assuming Americans won't be speaking that language, right? I've know when I was living in Japan, I'd pick up every now and then and turn, look at them, and just be like, "What'd you say?" And then be like, terrified that like this foreigner had any idea what they were saying.
Oh my god, he knows what we're saying.
Yeah, and they like run away, like run. But it is this assumed veil that they can get away with speaking like that. But so it would make sense Sheldon is trying to understand if they're speaking garbage or lying to him in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So, you know what, Rick? Great observation. We appreciate
Excellent.
it. And
Yeah.
honestly, I really appreciate this email just in general. We even spoke earlier in a previous episode how I really like that he just approached the constructive criticism straight to us rather than doing that like cowardly thing and just giving us like a 1 star and then writing all this stuff. So he's
Yeah.
giving us some room for improvement. And I really appreciate that. So, Rick, I thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
And now, do you want to go into Tim's email?
I'm going to go into Tim's email. So Tim reminded me of my dad because my dad's really into World War II and is trying to get me to read the Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. Have you heard of this book? This huge book, and Audible has it broken into 3 audio files because it's too big for one, or 2, I guess. But yeah, a lot of it is just super fascinating. A lot of stuff I don't know, but Tim brought into discussion the notion of in the pancake batter anomaly that we were talking about the German tactic Blitzkrieg, and this notion of Blitzkrieg means lightning and lightning attacking, right? And I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. And Tim, if I get this wrong, feel free to email me back. But from what I'm understanding is that Germany did use this style in a number of places. What I believe he said France, Poland, invaded Poland using a Blitzkrieg strategy. And however, when Sheldon says this, he says they use it in Czechoslovakia. And this gets into a really interesting discussion because technically they had control in Czechoslovakia and never used Blitzkrieg. What Sheldon's referring to was due to this assassination on Heydrich of what's his, yeah Hydra. I'll just go with Hydra. That works. The Germans retaliated by basically executing a large number of people. They did so swiftly and violently without much concern or discussion. And so Sheldon was kind of assuming that this retaliation was blitzkrieg, but in all rationality, that's just straight up genocide. Deciding to get revenge and kill a lot of people, that's not a military strategy. They already had control. So technically, they never actually used blitzkrieg in Czechoslovakia. And I just thought that was a really interesting way to put it. Very fascinating because technically, I agree that this was a revenge attempt or revenge, a retaliation, not necessarily a military strategy to take control. And I brought up, we responded back and forth a little bit, and we talked about how Hitler assumed that he could kind of get by telling people, yeah, I'm not going to invade anything anymore. We're done. And Tim brought up the comparison to Russia with Chimera, right? And Ukraine, saying, okay, we're just going to invade this part and we'll be done. But eventually they draw back on that and keep invading and keep going. And either because people were afraid or because people are hesitant to the previous World War, they're kind of like, okay, Hitler, don't do it again. And then he would do it again. And finally, Britain got into the war, and the U.S. eventually got in too, but that was because of Pearl Harbor. U.S. was even more resistant to getting into this. And yeah, so the notion was that Hitler was able to use a strategy because people weren't really putting up a defense. They weren't preparing for it. They're like, oh, Hitler's going to do his thing and we're just going to keep living. And then he would do it and nobody was ready and he would take over. And then they're like, okay, he did his thing. He'll be okay. And he'd do it again. However, the theory is that this strategy, this tactic, doesn't really work if people are prepared. And that when you get people who are prepared, things start to fall apart, which is what happened in Russia, that they tried to do this in Russia and Russia was ready for them. And Germany's military just could not withstand. He also mentioned that what we see from the propaganda films of Germany being this like industrial giant may not be what they actually were. That it's quite more common for German forces to be riding horses and pulling not trolleys, but wagons and stuff, that they didn't necessarily have the industrial strength that we typically know or think of with them. But yeah, so that's partially why it didn't work in Russia, because they were prepared. And he brought up my comparison to a siege, and I must have gotten this wrong because in my brain, I was always thinking that I compared it to a siege as a contrast, that they are polar opposites. And if I said this, I take it back because, yeah, they are definitely, especially after talking to Tim, that this blitzkrieg tactic and sieges are exactly different. Sieges are when you surround the city, you cut them off from everything, and you just play the waiting game. And you can think of if somebody was in a castle and they were forced to wait a month, soon all their food's going to be rotting. They're going to be running out of places to go to the bathroom. Clean water is going to be gone. People are going to be going stir crazy. And you just sit there and wait until they come out of the castle and you win. Blitzkrieg, on the other hand, is you just go in before they're even expecting it, take over before they know what's going on. And so, again, polar opposites, and I think that's a great way of putting it, and I appreciate clarifying that because it makes so much more sense to me with that. So I think that really gets into most of the discussion, and I love talking about this. I love history. I'm going to have to read that book and learn more about it because, yeah, my dad's pushed me so hard this far. I still find it interesting. So I think that wraps it up.
Well, that's great. Yeah, we learned something new, and he expanded on our IQ points.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Tim, again. We really appreciate it. And last email is a lot shorter, so I think I could probably read this whole one.
Yeah, go for it.
And I'm not just reading this one because it's a very nice one either, which it is a very nice one. So this is from Rebecca. She says, "Hey, Rob and Ryan. I recently came across your podcast a few weeks ago and I'm trying to catch up. I am currently on the Middle Earth paradigm. I can sometimes get through 2 episodes in a day. I like how long your episodes are. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the tangents you go off on. I was always a little curious about that, but I'm really glad that people like that. Because we tangent a lot. I am a huge fan of The Big Bang Theory. I will admit I did not watch this as it aired. I have found watching it through a streaming service allows me to watch as many times as I want, and that is where the love and appreciation for this show began. I am now able to quote this show like I quote Friends. It's always on in my house. Your podcast has given me another reason and chance to watch it. I usually watch 2 episodes at a time to correlate to the episodes on the podcast. The depth that your podcast dives into allows me to see these characters on a whole new level. You both have pointed out things that in all my rewatches I have never noticed. It has made me aware of what to look for and what to think about during an episode. There are many things that I have noticed, such as inconsistencies, plot holes, things that only a certain group of people would understand. Inside jokes, if you will. Character development, and so much more. I can't wait to see if you pick up on these things as well. Ryan, never having watched this show, I am excited for you to see things for the first time. I remember my first watch through was so blown away by how much I really didn't know about the show going into a watch. Thanks for an amazing podcast. It gives me something to listen to while on walks. Rebecca. So thank you. That was very sweet of you. And very, like after like a long week and like feeling defeated after dropping my other side hustle and leaning into this one, it definitely makes me feel better about.
I thought you were going to say after dropping my son. Like what?
Well, he picked himself back up. He's fine.
He kind of bounced back up.
Yeah. His head's fine.
It's only a little dented.
Yeah. We got him a helmet to correct that. It's fine.
It'll work itself out.
But yeah, emails like this really like I'm not used to these long emails full of appreciation and love, so I really like it because in the YouTube space it's just kind of short comments. Yeah. This is awesome, or you suck, like things like that. Just short and simple. So I really like how thoughtful everyone is. So thank you, Rick, thank you, Tim, and thank you, Rebecca.
I do have to say that Rebecca's comment, I've heard it from a few other friends being excited as I watched this the first time, and my take on it, I'm like kind of nervous that like, what if it goes off the deep end and becomes like a sci-fi murder mystery horror film slasher? Like, I didn't see that coming. Oh my god, this is a twist.
Well, they're here for the ride.
Yeah. See what happens.
All right. Anything else on the emails, or are we feeling good?
I think we're feeling good. I think that was a great discussion.
Cool. Otherwise, I just have so back to regular housekeeping and follow up for a couple other things on our end. So I have no neighbor update. So if anyone's interested, on a little context on that, if this is your first time here, my neighbor was actually killed. So I'm just going to leave it at that because you should go back and listen to old episodes.
There may or may not have been a mandatory evacuation in Rob's house.
May or may not. You'll have to listen and find out. But at this point, I have no updates. But I do have an update on what we talked about last episode about bus drivers.
Oh, yes.
So after we talked about that, I kind of got me thinking. So, all right. So last episode, we were talking about Penny's comments about Sheldon writing, the buses don't go where he lives.
Yeah.
So it got me to talk about a story that happened to me about how a bus driver, when he was picking up kids at a 4-way stop, I wasn't crossing him where the stop sign is on the bus, so I took a right. So I just did that because that's just what I thought was correct. He followed me home and kind of like, he didn't like yell at me, but he did like firmly say, "Hey, you're not supposed to do that, right?" And I was like, I kind of just chalked it up like, let's just be an adult. I'm not going to get into a fight with this guy. There are kids around. So
if he followed you home, you don't know what he's capable of.
Yeah. It's like, okay, this guy knows where I live too. So it's like, you know what? It's better to just like All right, you know what? I'm sorry. I won't do it again. I didn't realize that. Okay. So then I kind of just dropped it until we had our conversation. So then it got me a little fired up. So I looked into it. And it turns out, technically, I'm not wrong if I was back in Washington.
Oh shit, state
So
by
it's
state thing.
state by state. And I had no idea. So anybody out there know that if you cross state lines, the laws are completely different on how you approach a school bus. I didn't know because I specifically even remembering in driver's ed, hey, you as long as you don't cross, you're good. You can go this way, you can go that way, whatever. Just don't cross parallel to them
Yeah.
if the stop sign is up. So yeah, I shouldn't don't do it where I'm at, and I'm in Pennsylvania. So that's where I'm at. So if you're in Pennsylvania at a four-way stop or any stop, pretty much, and a bus driver puts up their stop sign, just stop.
And I think
So
it's fair wherever you are, if somebody stops with a bus there, just assume they know some laws that you don't, or they're from a state that you don't. And I feel like a lot of people get grumpy, like, why is this person stopping at this bus? And it's like, because half the states will arrest you for it.
on that note, here is the penalties in Pennsylvania. That the guy, if he really wanted to, I'm sure he probably maybe he had some footage or something. He could have slapped this on me. But Pennsylvania is like super into child safety.
Yeah.
So there are heavy fines if you get caught. So there is a 60-day license suspension.
Just like automatic?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's 5 points on your driving record. And on top of that, kick in the crotch, $250 fine on top of that.
Dang.
That's
harsh.
Whereas in Washington, you don't really have to do any of that stuff. You just can't cross them. Like where it has the stop, you just don't pass the stop.
And if you pass that, I believe it's like a $500 fine.
Yeah, I think I found 400 unless it changed. Maybe inflation, right?
Taxes and fees and a little more money grabbing here and there.
Yeah. So just be aware, state by state is very different.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep, and that's my update. I thought I'd share that. I thought it would be very not an IQ point, but it's helpful to anybody, any drivers out there.
I appreciate that. They're putting in a lot of roundabouts by my house, and I was doing one the other day and saw a school bus. I'm like, thinking about you. I'm like, I wonder what I would do if he threw up his stop sign. I don't know what. I'd probably just stop now.
I'm just gonna crash into him. Like, what do I do?
Jump out and run away.
Start screaming.
Get on the bus and start screaming at the driver.
And we can get into the episode.
Yay!
Overall thoughts?
Not my favorite, but I think I liked it more than the last episode. And it was still it was a fine episode.
I really enjoyed this one. I had a lot of fun. I really like Stephanie. I just really like her character.
Yeah.
I like that we're diving a little bit more into Howard's career, and that he definitely puts little Howard ahead of his career. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like the lengths that he's willing to try to get laid. That he would actually sacrifice his career if he if it came down to it.
Right. I felt like this episode was a little not a huge learning position for Howard, but it was still some character development, some education for Howard, and education for us on Howard's character. Like you said, what is he willing to do? Is he willing to learn from his mistakes? I don't know, but he has quite a bit of what's the word? Experience in this episode.
Well, I found about 5 IQ points.
That's my number 2.
Oh, I wonder if we found the same ones, but we'll wait and see. All right, and I'm leading this one?
Yep.
All right. So this is Season 2, Episode 8, The Lizard Spock Expansion, aired November 17th, 2008, written by Chuck Lorre and Bill Prady, and the teleplay by David Ghosh, and directed, as always, Mark Sandrowski.
Oh, yeah.
So, we're at the apartment, and Raj and Sheldon are debating. Saturn 3 versus Deep Space Nine. Sheldon wants to watch Saturn 3, and Raj would prefer to watch Deep Space Nine, and he says it's better. And Sheldon interjects, saying, "How is Deep Space Nine better?" And I like his answer is like, well, simple math says 9 minus 3 is 6, so it's 6 times better. And then Leonard gets witty and says, "Hey, let's meet in the middle and watch Babylon 5." And the joke just goes completely over Sheldon's head.
Yeah. I like Leonard's kind of like, never mind.
No, I'm not even going to bother explaining
just...
it to you. And to solve this issue, Raj suggests rock, paper, scissors, a classic way to solve something. But then Sheldon says that he doesn't like this because the chances of familiar players tying is 75 to 80%. That he would rather play a game called Rock, Paper, Scissors, Lizard Spock, which is the name of the episode, the Lizard Spock Expansion.
We get right into that title.
Yep. So we have a couple IQ points to unveil right here. So first one that I found was, what show is better?
Oh.
And then the second one, I'm guessing you did a little bit of research on Rock, Paper, Scissor, or Rock, Paper, Scissor, Lizard Spock.
Lizard Spock.
So first IQ points is a breakdown of these shows, and let's find out who the actual winner is. Who's right, Sheldon or Raj? So I've actually, sorry, Rick, this is Star Trek, and I have not seen this one, and you'll probably be disappointed in me that I have not seen Saturn 3 or Babylon 5 either.
I'm not sure I even knew Saturn 3 was a show. Like, I don't recall hearing of it.
It's a movie.
It's a movie?
So this is a 1980s British sci-fi film starring Farrah Fawcett, Kirk Douglas, and Harvey Keitel. The plot is two lovers stationed at a remote base in the asteroid fields of Saturn are intruded upon a retentive technocrat from Earth and his charge, a malevolent 8-foot robot. And Deep Space Nine, for anybody that, just like me, doesn't really follow Star Trek or needs a little bit of context on what Deep Space Nine is, this is a spin-off show of Star Trek The Next Generation that was aired between 1993 and 1999. It had a total of 173 episodes. Deep Space Nine is a space station near the planet Bajor. Looked into the pronunciation of that. And the crew must fight off rival alien species who want control of Deep Space Nine because of its strategic position close to a wormhole, which allows speedy travel to the far reaches of space. And Babylon 5, I'm guessing they're talking about the original series because there was also some spin-off movies and stuff like that. But the original series of Babylon 5 was from 1993 to 1998, and it had 111 episodes. And after the series ended, like I said, there were 6 made-for-TV movies as spin-offs in the Babylon 5 universe. And the premise of this show is, this is an American space opera following human military and alien diplomats in a space station called Babylon 5, built in the aftermath of several major interspecies wars as a neutral ground for galactic diplomacy and trade. So, who's right? What, Raj or Sheldon? Do you want to guess?
I'm going to say...
knowing the premises of all those, what would you say is better, is the best?
Just looked up a picture of Saturn 3, and I'm going to say Raj.
Well, you're right. And I did this with our good friend Rotten Tomatoes. So, Rotten scores. Saturn 3 has a Rotten score of 29% and an audience score of 30%. And then Raj's choice, Deep Space Nine, has a 9, as a series as a whole, is a 91% on Rotten and 88% audience score. And Leonard's choice of Babylon 5 is, there is no Rotten score as a series as a whole, but season 1 got 60% and it got an audience score of 93. So Raj wins this debate.
I really want to watch Saturn 3 now, though. I didn't realize it was a movie. I'm like... Farrah
Shit.
Fawcett too. Wow.
In the 80s
In the
too?
80s. Yeah.
Shit.
Shit.
Well,
Whoa.
well, well. Maybe that'll be our alternating episode every week.
Yeah.
Just Saturn 3 over and over again.
Yeah. This is the 10th time we've watched Saturn 3. And it gets better.
It gets better and better. All right. And that was the first IQ point. So now we're back to the show. We left off at rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock. So Sheldon explains the rules. He says it's very simple. Look, scissors cuts paper, paper covers rock, rock crushes lizard, lizard poisons Spock, Spock smashes scissors, scissors decapitates lizard, lizard eats paper, paper disproves Spock, Spock vaporizes rock, and as always, rock crushes scissors. And when they play their game, of course, they both choose Spock.
I do appreciate that Raj is like, okay, I think I got it.
Yeah. He has a PhD, so he picks up rules very fast. I'd be like,
What?
What am I supposed to do with my hands?
So my IQ point was on some history of rock, paper, scissors.
Nice.
Is that what you were going with too?
I didn't go over the history. I looked at his statistic. So he said that if you know a player, there's a 75 to 80% chance that there's going to be a tie. So I looked into that.
Find anything on that?
Sort of. I'll let you go first, since my mouth is a little dry after all that. So
fair enough. I found
back
a little
to my grasshopper.
Drink that grasshopper. So according to World Rock, Paper, Scissors Association, apparently there's a big association. They have an online website. The first mention of rock, paper, scissors was in China, a Chinese book called Wazazu by, I'm going to butcher this and I apologize, Ji Zhaoqi. And the game was called Xiao Shiling, and it's based somewhere between 206 BC to 220 AD. And I'm assuming this isn't like necessarily rock, paper, scissors as we know it. It was some form of throwing your hands together. And apparently this game transferred to Japan with a name, well, an evolution of the name, Zanzukumi Kin, which translated as something like three-way deadlock fist games. So having three options with throwing your fists out. And this website, the association suggests one of the earliest incarnations of it wasn't actually rock, paper, scissors, but throwing out your thumb, your little finger, or your index finger. I love it wasn't your middle finger. So, but the thumb was frog, little finger was slug, and index finger was snake. And apparently frog trumped the slug trumped the snake, and then the snake ate the frog. That's my understanding. And the frogs go together. And sometimes they go like this. And that in the 17th century, it evolved into what we know now as Jenkin, our version of rock, paper, scissors signs of some sort. And then in the 20th century, as Japan started opening its borders and talking with the rest of the world, it started going to other countries. I think it mentions France as one of the main ones. Where France mentioned it, other countries started picking it up. And what I got with Sheldon's statistic, I couldn't find anything on his statistic. What I did find was if you want to play the odds, men are more likely to throw rock from the beginning. Women are slightly more likely to throw scissors from the beginning. And these are just playing the odds, so it doesn't always work, but you will find that two men oftentimes both throw rock. And I find this interesting because I often throw rock, and I don't feel like it's more because I'm masculine or it's masculine, but because I'm lazy and I forget what I'm going to pick and I just keep my hand the same. So I don't know. Maybe it's something to do with that. What'd you come up with?
You're actually on the right track. So I found this. I did look for that specific statistic and I couldn't find it, but based off context of the research that I did, I think it's pretty true. So
Hmm.
I found an article on psychologytoday.com. So I def like I said, I'm not sure on the exact percentages, but what Sheldon is saying of rock paper scissors is true on the sense that it's all about opponent behavior predictability.
Hmm.
So rock paper scissors will just rip the band-aid off and say it's not a game of chance. A lot of people think it's a game of chance because people are just randomly putting out a symbol and there's a 33% chance that you could win or that it's a randomized thing. But it's not random at all. So it's not flipping a coin or it's not throwing a dice.
I mean, it's getting down into some what is it called? Freedom of choice versus free will versus predictability. And technically, we are all agents of chemical interactions, and we are, I mean, based on understanding our minds, understanding the chemicals going through our minds, our diverse education and environment, we could be like what we wake up and do tomorrow could be predicted. So technically, a game of three choices is pretty predictable too.
Yeah, and as we dive into the research study and what they've discovered, if you know the person too, like that's how you're able to read them a little bit better because you know how they're going to start. And once they start and you keep playing multiple games over and over again, there's almost like a pattern that you have to follow.
Yeah.
Because rock, paper, scissors is not a game of chance because it involves observation, mindfulness, manipulation, emotional intelligence, strategy, and skill. And some of that skill involves exploiting your opponent's non random behavior. So, this study was conducted in China with 360 students divided into 60 groups, and the players played 300 rounds against one another. On the surface, the results of the study appeared to be no surprise. The players in all the groups chose each action about one third of the time, just as if it was random. But taking a closer look at their behavior uncovers a strategy called conditional response, or what turns out to be win, stay, lose, shift strategy. So there are 9 strategies when you play rock, paper, scissors. So let me prep myself up for this because all right. Number 1, expect repetition. Winners tend to repeat winning behavior. So if the winner plays paper, most likely they will choose paper again. So you should go scissors. So again, predictive behavior. Number 2, follow the sequence when your opponent loses. Losers usually change their strategy and move to the next action. So in sequence, rock, paper, scissors, if they lose with rock, more likely they're just going to go paper because it's in their mind to just go in that sequence.
Yeah.
So you need to jump ahead 2 sequences to scissors. Number 3, know the symbols. So kind of like what you mentioned earlier about like men and their behavior, that they're more likely to choose rock first.
Hmm.
It's true because rock is seen as a symbol of aggression. So if a person starts getting irritated or upset, they're more likely to play rock. The most subtle move is paper as it represents passive, peaceful, and friendly. So when a player falls behind, they're less likely to play paper.
Ooh.
And because like when you get agitated, you're already kind of in that fist. So it's
Yeah.
like aggression. So you're agitated. You just keep doing it over and over again.
Until you punch them. Like, wow, that
Yeah.
was a rock.
Yeah. And choosing rock is for rookies. Rock
Ooh.
is the typical opening for rookies and men as it's a sign of power. So if you're playing a rookie, start with paper. And think ahead like chess. If you're going against a seasoned opponent, they will most likely not choose rock. Therefore, choose scissors because at worst, you'll tie. Number 6, manipulate your opponent. This is when you're a dick and you call out what your move is going to be. Like you say, hey, I'm going to go rock. I'm going to go rock. Getting in your head. And then they go scissors or something like that.
I did hear something about that. Usually you should not trust that.
Yeah.
If they're saying something, they're doing it just to screw with you. They don't actually mean it.
Yep. Probably. I played a lot of rock, paper, scissors in high school, and I played against a lot of dicks. They did things like that. And number 7, remember that no one likes predictability. If someone already throws a double, they're more likely to change it up. So if your opponent goes scissors twice in a row, more likely they're not going to go scissors a third time. Number 8, know the stats. Statistically, the expected average is 33.3% if everything is completely random. It turns out that the most common throw is rock at 35%, scissors at 35%, and then paper at 29.6%. And be mindful is the last strategy. Observe your opponent's hands before he or she throws. A tight hand, when raised, often ends in rock. A loose hand becomes paper, and the first 2 fingers loose results in scissors. Closely observe your opponent as he or she plays. Do they tend to fall back in one particular throw? Is there a pattern? Do they telegraph their throw by moving their fingers early? So things like that. So it actually is quite a strategic game.
I was gonna say, if you just wait like a split second and see what they're throwing and then do it, it wins every time.
Every time, sucker. Well, that's rock, paper, scissors. Lizard Spock.
Lizard Spock. I found it interesting that he had lizard in there, and that one of the original versions was frog, slug, snake. No lizard, but it's kind of in the same category.
Yeah, I looked into this, and I was a little curious if Big Bang Theory created this game, because I've never heard of it, and the answer is no. It was created in 1998 by engineers Sam Cass and Karen Bryla. All right. Well, Howard enters the apartment wearing an eye patch. And of course, we talked about this before. He must have gotten this from the pickup artist.
Yeah.
Because that was really hot at the time. Howard says that he needs to make himself distinctive and noticeable. And I do remember watching this show, and I do remember that the guys in that show, the pickup artist or whatever it was called, they all dressed very flashy and very extravagant, to the point where it's like, does this really work? Like, I remember the main guy wore this like really obnoxious like Cat in the Hat.
Yeah.
You know, it's like just like really tall top hat and stuff like that, like all weird colors and everything. It's like, dude, does that really work? Well, it must work, because I guess he had a success rate. So,
well, I think it's getting down to just calling attention to yourself and feeling like something to open up a communication channel, right? I feel like the problem with Howard's is it's misleading people, suggesting that he has a handicap when he doesn't, therefore insulting people with handicaps. And yeah, as opposed to just wearing a top hat, that's just saying, oh, I like crazy things. But the eye patch is, unless he has a lazy eye, is suggesting that he doesn't care about those who actually do suffer from eye issues.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And then, honestly, Howard's attire is flashy enough that you'd think that it would be like, he's always wearing a dickie. He has these huge belt buckles. He always has like an alien pin on his like turtleneck area on the dickie part. It's like, dude, you're kind of extravagant enough. You're already a peacock.
Very shiny. Very shiny.
Like, you don't need the eye patch. And yeah, like I said, Sheldon associates him with being a peacock. And Howard,
that's what it's called. It's called peacocking, right? Yeah. To go out and do this, yeah.
Yeah. And then Howard is certain that this method works, and especially if you throw in negs, which is a negative compliment.
Mm-hmm.
And his example is so horrible. Normally, I'm not turned on by big teeth, but on you, they work. He's like, I got a whole list of them. Who wants to be my wingman? It's like, dude, you're going to need a hospital. You're going to need an ambulance.
Yeah. I did a little bit into negs. I know we've talked about pickup artists, but I figured this counts as the neg section. Did you do some more on this, or?
No.
No.
So this is the next IQ point. Some
Yeah.
negs.
So, we've talked about the peacocking. We talked about negs being negative comments. I looked at some stuff, but there's a website called girlschase.com and an article by a man named Chase Chase Armonte, who had some thoughtful things, basically agreeing that Howard's going to end up in the hospital. And there's a notion between, a difference, blurred lines, of slight insults, flirtatious insults, and insulting somebody straight away. But basically, the site suggests negs will not work unless the girl knows you're joking and they know you. And if it's straight off and you're a stranger, they're not going to
Going to
know
be
you.
turned off by it.
Yeah, going to be turned off and very defensive right from the get go. But that turns it kind of into a self fulfilled prophecy type thing that if it does work, you're going to say, oh, this always works. And if it doesn't, you're going to be saying, oh, that it just didn't work that time. But the notion is that if you're trying any practice and you're getting out and talking to girls or getting out of your safety zone, comfort zone, and doing something, you at least have a potential. If you're not even getting out there, it's going to be a 0 success rate every single time. But if you get out there 100 times and it works once, then you have at least one time to say it did work, right? And it could work 1% of the time. But again, it's the slight difference between what Howard's saying is just completely offensive versus something that could be kind of flirtatious and joking around, right? In fact, story time.
Did you neg someone?
No,
And it went horribly wrong.
I was thinking back about when I was in middle school, and I'm not going to mention any names, but maybe the girl who said this is listening and she can email us and let me know. But I had sweaters that were like kind of fuzzy sweaters, and she said, look at Ryan's sweaters, let's call him Fuzz Boy, and called me Fuzz Boy throughout like the better half of that year. I don't know. And I always felt like, what the hell crawled up her ass? But later on, like, I went to an all boys high school and I had a friend who dated her. I'm like, that might have been like kind of one of those things of girls chasing boys on the playground or something. Maybe she thought it was cute and was negging me. Maybe I'm wrong, but at the time I was like, all defensive, like not interested in talking to her at all. But now, like, I'm like, maybe that was a neg. I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost like it's like you said, like schoolyard crushes. How like when you have a crush on, like when boys have a crush on a girl, they'll kind of like pick on her, pull her pigtails and stuff like that,
push her down in
like...
the mud and kick her. I'm sorry, I did that because I like you. And
that's how, rib. and that's how I met my wife. Exactly.
So yeah, maybe self-fulfilled. In this website, the author suggests something he calls curious indifference. To avoid scaring off the woman, act like you're kind of interested, but you're also not too interested. And I think we've kind of talked about this, that it's this notion that even if you're completely nice, but overwhelmingly nice, that can be scary. But if you're offensive from the get-go, that's going to be scaring people away. But if you're kind of like, oh yeah, I'm kind of here, but I'm not, but I'm kind of interested too, that can help you strike up the conversation and not be too threatening either.
Yeah, I remember the explanation in The Pickup Artist, because I sadly watched that show. Was that like...
I read the book. I'm not judging.
It's on audiobook on repeat.
Yeah, that's the only book I listen to.
It's my morning mantra as I looked in the mirror. Neg as many people as possible.
Neg him. Neg Rob.
That's how you make friends.
And then kick them when they're down.
Yeah. But their logic was that when you're at a bar, guys are overly nice to girls all the time. So there's nothing to separate you from the pack. Mm-hmm. So if you act disinterested or kind of put them down a little bit, then it separates you. And then then they're going to the logic is that they'll chase you because all of a sudden they seek your approval. Kind of dumb, but
And I would say I'm not sure I agree with that, but what I would say is if it puts them on the defensive, they are more inclined to strike up a conversation with you because they want to disprove you or argue with you. And that might not be taking the conversation in the right direction, but it's at least getting conversation going, which again is better than being reserved and not, keeping that success rate to a zero by not doing anything ever. But otherwise, probably might get punched too. There's a chance of that.
Yep. So if anybody has a great neg story, feel free to email us. I'd love to hear those.
Would Fuzzboy count as a neg, or is that just a straight up insult? I want to know. 7th grade Ryan is dying to know what that means. Fuzzboy.
She's listening and she's gonna DM you. No, I just hated you.
No, I still hate you. That's why I listen to your podcast every week. What?
She's still nagging you. Means she's interested. I hate your guts. Oh, she loves me.
She loves me. And I'm so interested.
I have to prove her wrong.
I gotta prove her wrong.
Conversation has been struck up.
I haven't worn fuzz in years. I'm not Fuzzboy now.
Wait, well, your beard says otherwise.
Oh, god damn it!
You just been negged. And now we're friends.
Gotta prove Rob wrong. Gonna shave it off next week.
All right, well, enter Penny because Howard Scooter is blocking her car in. And I like this. It's a similar in a previous episode where Penny is so intertwined with the group that she just knows things about them because she asks oh, did you get pink eye again?
Yeah.
And Howard tries to illustrate his game. He says, step 1, she notices the eye patch. And then he faces her and says, may I say, Penny, not a lot of women could look as hot as you with such greasy hair. Wah, wah.
I do like that she was like, not significantly, but earnestly and honestly like, oh, did you get pink eye again? I'm so sorry. Yeah. She's being very honest about that.
Yeah. Well, after his neg, she reaches out, pulls his eye patch from his face, and flings it back at his face. And then she's like, move your scooter, before I pick it up and throw it in a dumpster. And that's the opening scene. Good to move on?
Yep.
All right, then the opening credits, and now we're still at the apartment, and they're watching more TV. Sheldon doesn't want to watch the Clone Wars TV series until he sees the movie. He wants George Lucas to disappoint him in the proper order. And they're talking, if anyone's wondering, they're talking about the Star Wars disappointment, which is still a hot topic.
Yeah.
So this isn't an IQ point, but I thought it would be a great discussion point. Now that Sheldon has mentioned that he wants to watch it in the correct order, what is the correct order to us? Because there's a lot of many different ways to watch Star Wars.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if you have an opinion on this.
I would say you gotta start off at episode 4, A New Hope, because that's what originally came out first. Yeah. And the first 3, you consider them prequels, but if you between the movie making techniques, the story itself, and the disappointment of the second trilogy, it kind of ruins it. I think that you have to start off with the majesticness of 4, 5, and 6, and see kind of where the hype came from, what started it, and then follow along with what history played out.
I will say that's one of the reasons why I feel like the special effects in itself are a reason to watch the original first. Mm-hmm. Just because it's hard to go from like those old 70s, 80s graphics to like the newer stuff now. It's a little bit more challenging. Mm-hmm. But I watched the original first. I do what's called the Godfather order, also known as the Rinster order, named after Ernest Rinster. I looked it up. I have a whole list.
Actually, I made it up.
Because originally I thought I watched the Machete order, but I don't technically do the machete order because the true machete order is that they cut out Phantom Menace like entirely.
Oh.
So they'll watch 4 or 5, skip, and then they'll jump to the prequels, skip episode 1, watch 2, 3, and then go back to 6. But I watch the Phantom Menace still. This might ruffle a few feathers, but I like the Phantom Menace. I like it more than I liked Attack of the Clones. Even
Yeah.
with Jar Jar, I think Phantom is better. That's fighting words. Bring it on. I will I will battle you.
Out of 1, 2, 3, I think Phantom Menace was the best. I
It had
stand by
Duel of the
that.
Fates. It had Darth Maul. Like Attack of the Clones had. I'm not blaming Hayden Christensen because I thought he did a fine job with what he was with the tools that he had. I just can't stand Anakin as a character in general.
Yeah.
I find him childish and annoying. He's just like there was no even like that's why I couldn't watch Clone Wars because it's like, dude, I can't watch more Anakin. I mean, it gave us Ahsoka, which was awesome. So I kind of skipped ahead to like the later stuff. But then all the Anakin stuff, it's like, dude, I can't. Like, you are so annoying. You're such a child.
Episode 3, I couldn't take seriously at all because, like you said, it's that annoying child syndrome. You know, me and my partner have a ongoing joke now of we call it the what is it Greenland Kid. Have you seen the movie Greenland?
No.
So it's about who's it star? Gerard Butler, and Gerard Butler gets this message saying that the world's gonna end. You got to get to Greenland and get into this shelter and live. And
Just like that, too.
just yeah, dun, dun, dun.
Gerard Butler's talking like this the whole movie. I gotta get to Greenland.
And it happens to be that he's having a party and all of his neighbors see this message on his TV. So they're like, we want to go to Greenland too. And it gets awkward. And his son makes every single wrong choice that you could make in any fucking movie. And you're just sitting there like, natural selection dictates this kid needs to die. If he lives, I'm going to be angry at the movie, the filmmakers, and the world in general. And of course he's gonna live because he's a goddamn kid. But that's
spoiler
Anakin's,
alert.
You know what? If you want to take time to watch that movie, that's on you.
You brought this chaos upon yourself.
Amen to that. So that's how I feel about Anakin. He's the Greenland kid that every choice he's made is bad, and I don't like him as a character, and don't think he deserved to survive in any way, shape, or form from episode 1.
The Clone Wars didn't help. I got to an episode where it was basically like an episode. It was basically like Mallrats, and I know people love Mallrats, but like I don't know if it's because I'm an old man now. But when I watched that, I was like, dude, grow the fuck up. Like, what the hell? Like the episode of Clone Wars that I'm talking about that really just killed it for me was that Anakin is secretly married to Padme. And she's a senator. She needs to do her job because the galaxy will collapse without her going to her meetings, without her getting shit done, everything like that. And he's just trying to sweep her away for like a play day where it's kind of like, hey, let's hang out, let's go roll around in the grass and blah, 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 and everything. And she's like, no, I have meetings. I got things to do. A whole galaxy is relying on me to get things done.
You know, Padme, your hair's kind of greasy, but you're pretty.
Yeah. He didn't neg her enough.
He didn't neg her enough.
But I was just like so like annoyed and turned off by it all. But I was and Mallrats is the exact same thing. It's a childish boy wants to go on vacation with his girlfriend who's trying to help her father create a business.
That's a good point. You know, I need to watch Mallrats again. How old were you when you originally saw it?
I was older. I was like, I was in my mid-20s.
Because I want to say I was like 10.
Oh,
and you know, the parts I remember the most between the handshake with the what is he eating, and shakes the guy's hand after he's stuck it up his ass.
Oh,
like I remember
it's
that
been a
part.
while.
And I remember the guy with the trick of the eye thing, the 3D illusion.
God, I don't remember that part either. I just I remember watching it and being frustrated, and then the only thing that I remember is the game show part at the dating game show at the end, which was her father's TV show.
Yeah, yeah. And she was actually a really good character that she was trying. Oh yeah, and what's his name? Jason Lee.
Yeah.
His segment about his cousin being on the plane that was going to crash and everybody jerking off. And the co-host or somebody's like, "Did they come?" And he goes, "Dude, there's things you just don't talk about." Like what the? But yeah, this guy is looking at a 3D eye. I could never get 3D eyes to work, so I really sided with him. And
Oh my god, I remember that now. It's clicking in.
right, and
It's
the
like,
kids are like, "Oh, it's a schooner or whatever." It's like, haha, no, it's not. It's a sailboat. And they're like, a sailboat is a schooner.
well, anyways, that took us on quite the tangent. But
There's a tangent for
back to the orders of Star Wars. The Godfather order is A New Hope, then Empire, then going back to Phantom, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and then back to the original to Return of the Jedi. And then with the new stuff out there, I'll kind of sprinkle in Rogue One here and there, depending. Sometimes I'll start it in the beginning just because that really does lead into A New Hope, and that was just great. Rogue One is amazing.
Yeah.
And then the sequels, and then I'm not as diehard as most other people. Like I'll rewatch the movies over and over again because it's a less of a time investment. But like when you throw in like the TV shows, it's like I don't got time for that.
Yeah. The little guys Christmas special. What are those creatures called?
The Ewoks.
The Ewok Christmas special, right?
I did grow up watching Ewoks Battle for Endor a lot. We had that on VHS and it was awesome. Except I was always confused as a child. I was like, how come Wicket can talk in this one, but he couldn't talk in Return to the Jedi?
Goddamn logical issues.
Well, if anyone's interested, I'm sure Sheldon would appreciate this, but I looked up what all of the episodes are in chronological order. So this is chronological of the Star Wars timeline.
Mm.
So if you want to watch it in that order, well, it's not technically up to date right now because there's a few upcoming shows, which I'm really excited for.
I still need to finish Mandalorian. That's on me. I kind of gave up on Disney Channel, and I need to subscribe back to it to get on it. But what's
like you just didn't like it?
I watched an episode
Disney
like
or?
that. I have so many other shows to watch, and for some reason, when I think Disney, I think of campy kids stuff, and so it's hard for me to even log on to the channel. And I should really give it more of a chance. I did finish WandaVision before I canceled my subscription, but
I'm in the minority, and I think that WandaVision is one of the better MCU TV shows out there. Because I know a lot of people were kind of like, with it. They definitely like other things. What other shows are there? Like She-Hulk was okay, but then there was like Hawkeye and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and things like that. But I think WandaVision is my favorite because I like that play on old school TV.
yeah. I just really like the Scarlet Witch character, and I think Olsen is banging. I like her. Everything she's in, I like her. So, yeah.
And I like Catherine Hahn. She's amazing in everything that she does. But finish Mandalorian. I know how deep of a Star Wars fan are you?
I'm so.
Well, you may or may not like it then, because season 3 is definitely catered to like the diehard fans, and that's where it's alienating a lot of casual fans right now. And I definitely see it, but I'm not hardcore. I'm somewhere in between that and casual.
See,
I grew up with it, so I was always like a huge fan, but it's definitely I haven't watched every piece of content. I'll admit it because I ain't got time for that.
I loved Shadows of the Empire, and that came out around the time where I was really getting into Star Wars, and for it to be cut out as not part of the canon, like ripped out a significant chunk of my heart. And so I'm like, do I even want to bother with Star Wars now? Because I love Shadows of the Empire. I loved it.
Was that part of the Heir to the Empire series?
No, is I think it just started off as the Nintendo 64 game
Oh wait, Shadows of the Empire.
with Dash Rendar
Oh, it's a video. Okay,
and
because I was thinking of Dark Forces because I played Dark Forces growing up, which was an old PC game, but again, not canon.
that's and I remember that there was a novelization of this and reading that with my friends and talking about it. But I can't remember why I liked it so much. I just loved the video game, but I think it took place between episode 5 and 6 and explained some parts of what happened, with Boba Fett and stuff, um, and some other bounty hunters. But I liked it. I
Oh, I
liked
think
it a
my
lot.
brother read that or watched.
Even the like the bad spaceships. What are they called? Like Baracas or something. I'm gonna look this up and send you a picture because
Okay.
Shadows of the Empire. Of course, now it's not canon. You can't find any of the information.
Yeah, that's what's hard about Star Wars is that like there was 4, 5, and 6 were by itself for such a long time that people fell in love with the non-canon stuff, and now that Disney took over, all that stuff is just erased, and that's where it breaks a lot of hearts.
Yeah, they look like something out of Hellraiser.
It kind of looks like. Oh, for a second, I thought it was the thing that remember RoboCop,
Yes.
the thing with the machine arms. Nice. I'm glad you found it.
But anyways, I love Shadows of the Empire. I love the design. I love the characters, and now it's not canon, and it made me feel like, why should I bother if you're just gonna cut my heart out?
I say Mandalorian is worth
Worth
it.
watching. All right.
Definitely. I love it. Oh man. For me, I love The Mandalorian just because it's a blend of nostalgia, but
Yeah.
it also has these deep cuts and it also has like new things too. So it's kind of like this blend of all things. And like I said, that I tiptoe closer to being more of a diehard fan than
Yeah.
most people. So that's why like all these deep cuts are like singing to me.
And it's got what's
It's
his name in it from
uh
Last of Us,
yeah,
right?
Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
You rarely see his face,
But he's there. And that's what matters. His heart is there.
Well, please watch it, and maybe we could talk about that. I love Star Wars, so I'm definitely one of those Star Trek. Sorry, I'm definitely one of those Star Wars over Star Trek. So, if anyone's interested in hearing more Star Wars talk, maybe that could be our every other week thing.
And I've been I think part of the reason I went for Star Wars over Star Trek is because I do like that fantasy almost epic hero's journey that's on it, where Star Trek is more of a adventure show seeking out new planets. Star Wars is more of the magical circle of going on an adventure and coming back and growing from the whole thing.
It's the difference of science fiction versus science fantasy.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Well, if you're interested in chronological order, this is the order. And again, there are some things in here that are upcoming that are not out yet, but we are all looking forward to it. So, in the timeline, it's Star Wars The Acolyte, which is up and coming. Then, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Then, the couple Lego Star Wars films, The Yoda Chronicles.
Wait, Lego's
and
canon?
It, according to this list, it
Holy
is canon.
shit.
And like I said, I have not watched a lot of this, so I cannot confirm that. I might watch it here and there when my kid is of age, but until then, I'll stick with the Mandalorian. Then there's the Padawan Menace, then the Clone Wars TV series, then Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, then Star Wars TV show The Bad Batch, then Solo, A Star Wars Story, then the series Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then the TV series Star Wars Rebels, which is my favorite. Love it.
What's that on? Disney?
Yeah, it's an animated one. So it's basically it's the events that led. It's pretty much the events right after Order 66. So it's in between episodes 3 and 4. and it
Ah.
follows this group of rebels. It's before they become rebels. They're kind of just going off on adventures and everything like that. And these characters are going to be in live action in the Ahsoka series. So very
Oh.
excited for that.
I know what you're talking about now. I just looked up a picture and it's all coming back. I haven't watched it yet, but I know the
I
series now.
love it. It's great. First season's a little challenging just because of the main character. It's that annoying kid
The
syndrome
Greenland
thing.
kid?
Yep.
Oh, god damn it.
Greenland kid.
Greenland kid.
But after that, it's Andor, then Rogue One, then Star Wars Droids, then Episode 4, A New Hope, then the Star Wars Holiday Special, then The Empire Strikes Back, then Return of the Jedi, and then there's Lego Star Wars Freemaker Adventures, then Lego Star Wars Droid Tales, and then the Ewok movies, and then The Mandalorian. Then it goes into Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, and then up and coming is the Skeleton Crew, then Star Wars Resistance, and then Lego Star Wars the Resistance Rises, and then Episode 7, The Force Awakens, then The Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, and then Forces of Destiny. And that's all there is right now. So if you're interested, there's your order in chronological order.
Interesting. I want to watch Rebels now.
You should. It's awesome.
I also want to play Shadows of the Empire again.
Well, all right. Enough Star Wars talk. Moving on. So Sheldon offers a game of rock, paper, scissors, Lizard Spock, and Leonard just gives up instantly. And Raj is like, I see what you did there. And of course, over Sheldon's head again. Like, what'd I do? Well, Leonard gets a phone call from Howard with a DEFCON 5. Sheldon corrects Leonard regarding the levels of DEFCON and begins to relax. And Sheldon relates the DEFCONs to Star Trek movies that 5 is worse than 1. So, should we dive into a DEFCON?
Oh, I didn't do DEFCONs.
I did.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So
you do DEFCONs, I'll do Star Trek.
Yeah. So here is our deep dive into DEFCONs. So Sheldon is correct on the order of DEFCON levels. And I found this on military.com. DEFCON, short for Defense Readiness Condition or simply Defense Condition, is the U.S. military's ranking system for defense readiness for a potential nuclear attack. The system of ranking the perceived threat to a national security was created during the Cold War, when fear of communism was at a high. DEFCON 5 is in effect for the lowest perceived threat, while DEFCON 1 is the highest level and readiness for a state of war. So number 5 means peacetime and normal, and the exercise term is fade out. Number 4 describes the everyday operating procedures for fighting units. Most military forces are usually at level 4 or 5. At DEFCON 4, the U.S. military complex ramps up intelligence, gathering, and shores up security. And the exercise term is double take. DEFCON 3, 2 steps from war. DEFCON 3 is generally seen as the standby level of alert and is the highest level of alert during peacetime. Men are to return to their stations and be prepared to move out if necessary. The exercise term is roundhouse. DEFCON 2, 1 step from nuclear war, is implemented when an enemy attack is expected. Troops are poised for combat at this time. The exercise term is fast pace. During this stage, the United States will have subs at sea and bombers waiting on runways. And DEFCON 1 is reserved for when an attack is perceived as imminent or already underway, when the nation's forces are engaged in full-on war mode. The exercise term is cocked pistol. The highest level the U.S. has reached is DEFCON 2 during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The U.S. is currently in level 3 as of January due to the due to the Russian conflict, according to OSINT, which is the open source intelligence, on the website defconlevel.com. However, the government does not release official levels to the public for security reasons. And that's my deep dive on DEFCONs.
I always, I don't even think I knew that was an acronym, but there was a game for PlayStation called War Games DEFCON 1, and I used to love it. And I guess it makes sense because it wasn't about the Cold War and nuclear wars. Humans have gone to war with robots, and the robots are already here killing us. So it was DEFCON 1. You're at war. It made sense.
You're already at war. Yep.
It was a good game. It's like tanks, but you also got to play the robots trying to kill humans. So you got to see both sides of the conflict.
All right.
And honestly, it was fun being the robots. They had the mech wear things on your missiles, right?
All right. Well, back at the university where they finally arrive, Raj and Sheldon are still debating over Star Trek movies. So you said that you got some stuff on Star Trek?
I got some Star Trek.
Great. We gave Star Wars so much love. Let's give some Star Trek love.
We got Rotten Tomatoes, and Raj says number 5 can be the worst, can be worse than number 1, or 5 can be worse than 1, because Star Trek 5 was worse than 1. And according to Rotten Tomatoes, this is true. Star Trek 5 is lowest on the list, number 13. Followed by number 12, Star Trek Nemesis, which I think is weird because I kind of liked it, but I love Tom Hardy, and Tom Hardy does excellent in everything he does. He was Jean-Luc Picard's clone, and he was like a younger version of Patrick Stewart. So Tom Hardy being Patrick Stewart was kind of fun to see. Other than that, I really don't know what the plot was. I just remember it was Tom Hardy. So the very first film is scored in at number 11. So although Raj was right that 5 was worse than 1, 1 is still pretty high on the list of not being good. Generations was number 10. And I remember wanting to love Generations, but did not. This is where there's a ripple in space. And it's not necessarily a time loop. It's a, from my remembrance, it's been years since I've seen this, but it's a ripple that if you go through, you go to your, like, divine heaven, like your perfect place in time. And Jean-Luc Picard goes there and meets Captain Kurt, right?
Are you asking me? Yes. Because I've never seen any of these.
Who's the first captain? Captain, I want to say Kurt Russell. That's not right.
Captain Kurt Russell. It's Captain
Russell, the first Star Trek captain.
Captain Kirk.
Captain Kirk. Yeah.
That I know.
Well, what's his last name? James T. Kirk. Kirk is the last name. Wow.
Rick Tiberius is going Kirk, to kill us. That's a cool name. James Tiberius Kirk.
So anyways, this is they end up meeting in this heaven-like ripple in space. And then number 9 was Insurrection. I never even saw Insurrection. Star Trek 3 was listed as number 8. Star Trek 4 is number 7. Star Trek 6 is labeled number 6. 6 is 6. Star Trek Into Darkness, and it's weird. They're putting the new films on here too. And as far as I know, they don't share the same timeline. Whereas Star Trek: The Next Generation and Star Trek: The Original did crisscross, at least in Generations. They were.
Well, I know in one of the new ones there was something with the time, like going with time travel and everything. That like the new Spock met old Spock.
Oh, you're right.
So
right.
They are kind of connected.
I have to say with what's his name? Anton Yelchin. He played Pavel Chekhov. Anton Yelchin was like one of my favorite actors, and he tragically died. He was going to his friend's house to practice something, and his car started rolling back. And on instinct, or people theorize on instinct, he tried to stop it, but typically if a car's rolling backwards, we're not strong enough to stop it, and so it pinned him between him and his gate, and he died. But he's in a lot of excellent movies. He was in the remake of Fright Night. He was in the Odd Thomas movie, the Dean Koontz book adaptation. He was in a movie called Like Crazy that I love that has Jennifer Lawrence and Felicia something. The woman from Rogue One is in it.
Oh, I want to say it's not Felicity Day. Felicity Day is someone else.
Yeah, she's from Buffy. Man. Anyways, she's in it. He's an excellent actor. And then I saw him in Star Trek, and I love this. And then he tragically passed away, and I haven't watched the last Star Trek, the new one, so I couldn't be in it. Anyways, Into Darkness, developed in 2013, is number 5, and then Beyond, which came out in 2016, is number 4. So those new movies, and I have to wonder if it's just because of the new filming style and the graphics that they squeaked up high on the list. Number 3, though, is Wrath of Khan, which is Star Trek 3. And that's the one that I always think of when I think of Star Trek, is Wrath of Khan. I don't know why, but it's one of the best. And then number 2, which is my favorite, Star Trek First Contact. This is where the Borg go back in time and try to stop humans from developing hyperlight space travel. And so everybody, the crew of Jean-Luc Picard's crew has to follow him into the past to stop the Borg from doing this. And the Borg they're basically zombies. And it freaked me out as a kid where the Queen of the Borg gets like put down almost like a spider. It's just like her head, and she's getting inserted into machines, and like she has like dead flesh, and she puts living flesh on Data's arm and like blows on it, and it's kind of kinky, but kind of like, wow, he has real human flesh on his arm now. Anyways, number 2. Number 1 is Star Trek 2009. So that newer Star Trek squeaked up as number 1 on the list.
Very cool.
So that's my thoughts on the Star Trek list. I think First Contact's my favorite, but I love the Borg.
Well, maybe I'll start with that one then, if I was to watch a movie.
Oh yeah. I put a note here. Maybe we should have a viewing party with at least one of them. Something.
Maybe First Contact.
First Contact. I would view the shit out of that in a party.
Well, I found the exact same stuff, and according to what's going on in the show, Raj versus Sheldon, Raj is beating Sheldon 2-0.
Of course.
And now we meet up with Howard. Howard got the Mars rover caught in a ditch trying to impress a woman. And guest star alert, we have Sarah Rue, who plays Dr. Stephanie Barnett. She has been in several TV shows and movies, such as American Housewife, Drunk History, a series of unfortunate events, Will and Grace, Bones, Rules of Engagement, along with much, much more. She has a very long acting resume.
My favorite is she was in a movie called Can't Hardly Wait.
Right. I made note of that too. Like, that's where I remember her from.
That's where she calls everybody sheep. She's "You're all sheep." Bah.
Of all the things, that's what I remember her from, like, the most.
Sticks out the most. It's only like a couple seconds long, but it's memorable.
Yeah. But around this time, her big show was before she got this gig, was a show called Less Than Perfect. It was 4 seasons, and it had many now familiar names. Zachary Levi, who was in the TV show Chuck and is now in the DC universe as Shazam. Andy Dick, Eric Roberts, Will Sasso, and I'm going to throw out Andrea Parker, and she's noteworthy because I was a huge fan of a show called The Pretender. So I'm throwing it out there. Everyone is shocked that he has a woman there because they're like, holy crap, did the eye patch actually work? And Howard's like, no, there's 3 other guys with eye patches.
So
And what?
we get
Oh
a
yeah.
point of me being like Sheldon. I've kind of combined this because there were a couple of other things he said regarding the eye patch, but we get episode 1, and this is episode 8. I don't know. I was thinking of 7. So he says there are 3 other guys. I'm thinking, if I try to be catchy or uh, cooler or something, there's going to be. I'm never original. I always seem to do what everybody else is doing. But also, the combo wears it. I think it was just straight up the way it works and me thinking this is going to be cool. This is going to get somebody's attention. But later on, when she goes, uh, Leonard asks her if she was actually interested in Howard. She goes, he was wearing an eye patch. So
Yeah.
I could see people having that same reaction to me. That what I think is cool or clever will probably not have a good reaction. I don't think I'd wear an eye patch out in public, but I could still people. My example, Merces. I am a big fan of hip packs, side packs. I remember when I was a kid, somebody saying like, do you have a dead animal on your waist? But I feel like now guys are expected to carry Merces. Like we have to, because we have to carry medicine, we have to carry a wallet, sunglasses, and we have to keep them safe so we don't get pickpocketed. But even a couple of years ago, I had like this side pack on me, and I saw like I was at a beer fest, and people were pointing and laughing at it. I'm like, "Fuck you! I need to carry stuff, and I'm going to." So I
Well,
could
the
see,
new trendy fanny packs or like those Merces and everything are trendy now. But the
yeah,
thing is, you don't wear them around your waist. You wear them like a satchel. You wear them
yeah.
like around. Like so, if you do that, then I think you're good. And I'm only saying that because I just got one.
No, see, I got it right here. It's definitely it was a side pack, and he
Oh, it's
put
a
it
cool
on.
looking one.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
they're making
and
fun of it. I'm like, "Fuck you!" I like it.
yeah, this is where I keep my passport ID and
This,
lipstick.
yeah, my stockings and a
Yeah,
little snack if I get famished.
yeah. I have snacks. What do you have?
Yeah. Thanks, but not original and never taken very well in public. All right, so 1 point like Howard.
Well, the eye patch didn't work, but what did work was how'd you like to visit a secret government facility? And my question is, would that actually work? Because I feel like if someone said that to me, I'd be like, no. I feel like I'm going to get arrested for trespassing.
I don't know. Part of me would be like, I'm listening.
Well, well,
Like,
well.
which facility? What are we doing?
Yeah. Well, they have Leonard take Stephanie out of the facility while Howard, Raj, and Sheldon try to solve the issue. And Howard is funny because he's like, oh my God, my mother is going to love her. And Sheldon says that maybe they can carpool together while they visit him in federal prison. So now we jump ahead into the car where Leonard and Stephanie are making out.
They're already making out.
Yep.
You knew it was coming, but
Yep. All while Leonard is talking up Howard. And she loves how loyal Leonard is to Howard as they're making out. That was a nice laugh out loud moment.
uh-huh.
And like you said, Leonard wanted to know if he actually had a shot with her, and she was like, "No,
Are
he
you
had
insane?
an eye patch." He said I could drive a car on Mars.
Which is fair. I can't blame her for that. Like that, more than any neg or compliment, like that would get my interest if somebody was hitting on me. Like, girl comes up and he's like, "You want to drive a car on Mars?" I'm like, "You're gonna steal my kidneys." But yes,
Yeah.
I do.
As long as I got shotgun though. All right, well, back in the control room, they're having difficulties, and Raj gets smart and he says that they could call AAA, but it'll take 35 years to get there.
I actually have 1 point being like Raj here for getting distracted easily because he says, "How's it going?" And Raj just goes, I'm actually checking my email." And checking email when he's supposed to be helping the Mars rover. But yeah, his getting distracted there, and apparently was not supposed to be doing that.
I thought you were going to say you just turned into a big smartass.
That too. Oh, I
Oh,
figured.
is that another point?
Yeah, one more point. I'm a smartass.
Well, I did a little research on the distance from Earth to Mars because he said, "Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Do you want to take this one?"
No, I want to see what you said first. I want to compare.
Okay. All right. So Raj says that it'll take AAA 35 years to get there. So I was wondering, how fast is that car going through space?
Yeah.
So the question now is really, how long does it take to get to Mars? So, according to NASA right now in 2023, or at least from the data from the 2020 mission with the Perseverance rover, it takes about 7 months to get to Mars.
Yeah.
A spacecraft departs Earth at a speed of 24,600 miles per hour. Or for our friends across the pond, 39,600 kilometers per hour. And I did a little bit of math on where Raj got 35 years from, or at least how fast they would be traveling if it actually did take 35 years. So these are the kind of nerdy story problems that I like, because I know that distance equals rate times time.
I took this a different way. I tried to figure out if you were going an average of 65 miles per hour, how long it would take you.
Good, because I did not do that. I know how long it'll take 30, or how fast it'll be if 35 years, though.
Yeah, how fast? Because it's not 65 miles per hour.
Oh, it is not even close. That AAA car has got to put the pedal to the metal.
Book it.
So in order to do this math, I'm sure this is basic math for a lot of people, but I had fun doing it. So 35 years. So 1 year has 8,766 hours. And you get that by 365.25 days times 24. You can't forget that we have leap year.
Yeah, I kind of left that out. I said, fuck it.
Oh, so your math is wrong then?
It's wrong. But I gave a little, estimating, rounding up here and there, so it works itself out.
Yeah, it'll crank. Well, that's the thing. So I'll get to that. But this equates to 306,810 hours is in 35 years. So that's how we get our variables in the equation.
Yeah.
So from here, it's where the math gets a little wonky, because the distance between Earth and Mars changes on a daily basis, since both planets are in motion and orbiting the sun. So this is where it got a little fun, because I learned more about this as I dove into it. So at its closest, or at least in theory, because it hasn't actually happened yet, Mars can be as close as 33.9 million miles away. The closest recorded distance was back in August of 2003, where Mars was 34.8 million miles away, or 56 million kilometers. According to NASA, we won't get this close again to Mars again until the year 2237.
How much is it on average?
So I haven't gotten to the average yet. So yeah.
So I'm like, wow, that's a lot different than my number.
Yeah, so that's the closest that will ever be. So the closest we'll ever be to Mars, at least theoretically, is 33.9. But the closest documented is 34.8. The farthest away that we've ever been from Mars is when we're on the exact opposite side of the sun's, which is 250 million miles away, or 401 million kilometers. So on average, that we found, the average distance that we are from Mars is 140 million miles away, or 225 million kilometers. So I'm throwing out a lot of numbers right now, so hopefully people can follow along.
That's why I let you go first, because I think my numbers are wrong.
Or maybe mine are. But if we look at that average, let's just assume it's the average distance. So 140 million miles away. AAA would have to be traveling 456.3 miles per hour, or 734.3 kilometers per hour. So either way, that's way faster than what a car can travel, even through space. At its closest, at 34.8 million miles away, the car would have to be traveling 113.4 miles per hour. And at its farthest away, at 250 million miles away, AAA would have to be traveling 814.8 miles per hour. So you have to be going very fast.
Not as fast as I would have thought, but still.
Yeah, it's still 35 years, though.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah.
And if you don't stop to eat, pee, or sleep, it adds up.
Yeah, well, you're in a vacuum. Once you get in that trajectory,
you're just in the zone.
Yeah.
You don't need to eat when you're driving through space, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for some reason I did 7 months, or no, I did 300 million miles away. I don't know what made me get that number. I found it somewhere. That's definitely on the higher end, the 250 million miles. So I wish I knew where I found that. I didn't document it. I don't think I made that number up, but...
Do you think that was the distance that Mars is from the sun?
Maybe that's what it was. No, because you're saying the furthest we were from Mars is when we're on different parts of the sun, right?
Yeah.
So...
Which was 250. Yeah, so I don't... Yeah.
know where I got that number.
Yeah.
But anyways,
I got most of these numbers off NASA.com.
I thought that's where I was. I was at NASA.com, not NASA.gov. Oh, shit. Anyways, if it were 300 million miles, it's only 50 million more than the...
Yeah.
At 65 miles per hour, you get... how do I even do this? Oh, if you're going 65 miles per hour, to get across 300 million miles, it would take 4,615,385 hours, or 192,308 days, which translates to 527 years. So 527 years at the average of 65 miles per hour to get... I don't know where the fuck I was going. Further than Mars, apparently. But anyway, 65 miles per hour is going to take you a lot longer than the 35 years or the 7 months that were quoted. Mars NASA.gov. Spacecraft departs Earth at a speed of 24,600 miles per hour. The trip will take about 7 months and about 300 million miles. Is it detouring?
Oh.
Where does it go?
Or is it accounting for the curve and everything? Because as the planets are moving, they're orbiting. So once you go onto a trajectory, maybe you have to move around a little bit.
Wiggle waggle?
Actually,
little wiggle room. That's where the phrase comes from, wiggle room.
Yeah. So maybe my numbers are just... Maybe the numbers that I found were just if it was just...
Straight there?
Straight. Yeah.
It seems like you could plot out where Mars would be and just go straight to that point and intersect it when it's hitting. But
yeah,
that's why we don't have PhDs. I'm just glad I didn't make that number up because...
Yeah. Well, this IQ point didn't actually solve anything.
No.
But it was fun.
It's made things worse.
I know. We're going to get some hate emails now. Well, anyways, since they can't fix it and AAA won't work, they have to resort to plan B, which is wipe the security footage, scrap all evidence, and bolt. And I love Sheldon's why wasn't that plan A?
I love that they actually all just go through with this too, because at first I thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
And they actually wipe everything.
Wipe that shit.
We're out of here.
We are back at the apartment, and they're watching the news, and the report states that they cannot confirm the Mars rover malfunction. And Howard is oh, thank God for plan B. And I like this, that the wheels start turning in Penny's head. Hey, wait a minute. Don't you work at the Mars rover?
This was my favorite scene in the episode. Yeah. This is great.
Yeah. You told me I could drive a car on Mars when we first met. And Howard's full on denial mode. It's
no.
I don't think so. He's like, no, I remember specifically because you asked if I was from Mars since my ass is out of this world. It's like, sounds like something I would say, but no.
Sounds like something I'd say, but no. No, but I remember you said.
Yeah. And all this is happening while Leonard and Sheldon are having an awkward conversation of creating a cover story. And I have no idea why Leonard would involve Sheldon, because we established that he can't keep a secret from a previous episode.
Yep.
Hello, cousin Leo.
That's true. Yeah.
I am cousin Leo.
I'm getting another point because they're bringing Sheldon and lying back into this. And again, I cannot lie. And even when Sheldon tries to force the lie out, that sounds exactly like me sometimes.
Yeah.
Cannot lie about where Leonard is going. Yeah.
And they have this big back and forth about of Leonard trying to well, just tell him I'm going to the office. Okay, Leonard is going to the office. Office? He just cannot lie. He just cannot keep this secret. And then Leonard just finally just says, fine, I'm going to the office. Well, and then Sheldon's like, well, I don't believe you. And then Sheldon, just being clumsy with secrets, asks the group after Leonard leaves, isn't anyone interested where Leonard is going? And Penny's reaction is obviously doesn't care. She's like, sure, fine, where's he going? And Sheldon, unconvincingly, he went to the office.
The office.
But he's really at Stephanie's apartment.
Mm-hmm.
He's on a date with Stephanie, and she is a doctor. And today she removed an appendix, a gallbladder, and about 1.5 feet of a bowel. And this was pretty funny. He's like, well, I hope it wasn't I hope it was 3 different guys. And she's like, no, it was the same guy. He didn't make it.
He didn't make it. She's very steadfast.
Very,
right?
Yeah. I bet I know it's funny for us, but as I'm sure doctors are used to this all the time, where it's they have to have thick skin.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're not going to make it.
And I think it's funny for us because it is so gruesome and tragic that we have no other way to really deal with it but to laugh holy shit, that's horrible, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're onto something, that doctors get thick skins and they have to.
Yeah. Well, they finish eating and boom, they start making out. You could tell that Stephanie is just super into him. And like I said, I really like Stephanie. We know at the end of this episode they keep dating, so I really like their relationship, and I think that Stephanie is one of the more compatible girls that Leonard dates.
Well, right now I think she's just in it for physical attraction. I don't see any actual connection. She doesn't seem interested. He says, I'm a physicist, so I thought about stuff all day, and she's like, whatever, starts making out. He's just a piece of man meat for her, to me. So I'm curious where this is going to go, because it seems like.
I guess we'll find out next time.
Yeah,
I have things to say in the future episodes. Well, they're continuously making out and hooking up, all while Howard continuously calls her to meet up with the family and have a brisket. And Leonard has a guilty conscience of betraying his friend, but he doesn't want to stop hooking up. Smart man. And Howard calls again, and you hear his mom in the background, and we're going to Olive Garden.
I like that Leonard also points out, I've had the briskets. Good.
Yeah.
The brisket's coming up again.
Yep. That's an ongoing thing. How much brisket do they have?
Right?
So much brisket. Well, now they're at the laundry room, and Leonard bumps into Penny, and she notices his new shirt and instantly knows that he's dating. Leonard confides into Penny about his situation regarding Howard, and I love Penny's reaction. Is well, is his friend Wallowitz?
Right away, right?
Yeah. So pretty much she says, fuck him. And Penny gets nosy and asks if they slept together, and she's proud of her friend. He's getting laid.
I'm mixed on that reaction, because I like her to be a little jealous, and she seems too like nice. Like as far as romance between them, it's nice as a friend to be supportive, but at the same time, as romantic goes, I'm like, I kind of wish that she was like, right, but it's a mixed bag. I do like that
Yeah.
she does say that they were dating, even though it was one date, and he says, "Could you tell Raj that?" Because apparently Raj doesn't believe they were dating.
Yeah, he needs confirmation from an outside source.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, now we're outside of Howard's house, and Leonard is there to tell Howard the news. He's going to be a good friend and he's going to own up to it. But this gets interrupted by a phone call because Stephanie beats Leonard to the punch. And now Leonard is dead to Howard. Slams the door in his face.
I love how Howard acts so nice and he's like, "No, I appreciate you calling me. I understand completely. Thank you for your time. Have a great day." And he's like, "You're dead to me."
And now we're back at the apartment, and the three other guys. So we're with Raj, Sheldon, and Howard, and they're eating Chinese food, and they battle over the final
The
dumpling.
last dumpling.
Sounds familiar because this happened during the dumpling paradox.
Yep.
And they all play rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock for the dumpling, and of course, they all chose Spock. And then Leonard comes back, and Howard refuses to acknowledge him. Sheldon speaks on his behalf, but Leonard is dead to him. Well, Howard dives deep into the pit. Did someone feel a breeze? Oh my god, is there a ghost? And Raj, laugh out loud moment, he's like, screw it, I'm eating it. So he just takes that last dumpling.
Two things. One, I will be like Raj here. If we have played rock, paper, scissors, and there's a stalemate, I'm going to eat that goddamn dumpling before it gets cold. I will give everybody the opportunity to eat it, but at a certain point, I don't want it getting cold. I don't want the dumpling going to waste. I will eat the dumpling.
Yep. Good man.
Before
don't let it go to waste.
It goes cold. After offering everyone. The other thing is I have an IQ point about ectoplasm.
Oh.
Because I called shenanigans on Sheldon's discussion of cold breeze is connected with ectoplasm. So, this is because I'm a horror writer. I love horror movies. Ectoplasm, according to Ghostbusters, ectoplasm is how ghosts appear and manifest, and it's kind of their substance in this world. However, in reality, ectoplasm, according to biology, is the outer layer of cytoplasm and amoeboid cells. That's above me. I was bad at biology, but we're talking about supernatural. And technically, ectoplasm is a substance that comes out of an orifice of a medium during a seance. So during a seance, mediums, and you can find pictures of this, mediums, the psychic or whatever, would have shit come out of their nose or ears or mouths, and it would start floating up. And ghosts were supposed to manifest or materialize or speak through it. According to Wikipedia, Encyclopedia.com, and GhostbustersFans.com, GBFans.com, is usually cheesecloth being regurgitated. And the cheesecloth was usually dipped in some sort of paint, a luminous paint, a silver paint of some sort, so that it was shiny and sparkly in the dark lights of the seance. And you can just imagine people choking down paint lacquered, paint soaked cheesecloth just to like spit it up during a seance and have it like float on a string or some shit. I don't know how it worked. But
this was all staged.
It was supposed to be true, but when you look at pictures, it's staged. It's staged.
Yeah. Well, if someone actually puts cheesecloth in, like they're trying to, I'm just imagining it just being yanked down.
Yeah, take a look at the pictures. It looks like cheesecloth being yanked out. Medium ectoplasm. Yeah, no, it looks like cheesecloth being yanked out of them.
Oh my god. What is happening? God, people are weird.
And people would pay to see this. They like it was like, I don't know, a Friday night movie or something. They'd go and say, I want to talk to my Uncle Tim, and they're like, okay, blah, and spit up all this cheesecloth. And so the thing is, this is quite a bit different than the Ghostbusters version. Even the Ghostbusters version was a slimy substance, but it's usually in reality known for coming out of mediums. Problem with this is it has nothing to do with cold spots, except being from a spirit. Actually, not even from the spirit. It came out of the medium. It was associated with supernatural, but according to spiritshack.com or .co.uk, the theory is, and I've heard this other places, I believe Ghost Hunters went over it thoroughly, spirits need energy to interact with our reality. And usually they build this up like a battery and charge up using heat energy. So the notion is if you find a cold spot, it's because there's a ghost sucking up all the heat energy and they're about to do something or interact with you. But that doesn't mean that there's going to be ectoplasm, and it doesn't mean that there's a medium doing a seance. So when Sheldon compares these two, from my knowledge and my research, I have no reason to understand why he's saying that they interact, except that they are both supernatural things. So that's my spiel. I always thought ectoplasm was... There was a movie called The Haunting in Connecticut that goes over ectoplasm, and I've always been fascinated with people barfing up cheesecloth. All right, so that was my IQ point on ectoplasm.
All right. Well, now we have the arrival of Stephanie, and Howard acknowledges her, and this voids Sheldon's participation, because the rules are rules. And Stephanie offers up her roommate to Howard as a peace offering. So naturally, we know that Stephanie hates her roommate.
I thought she was trying to be nice. You might be right that she hates her, but I thought it was like, I feel kind of bad, and I like Winter.
Hook him up with someone else. That's her roommate. Imagine if you went on a date with Howard and I hooked you up. Wouldn't you come to me and be like, dude, what?
We don't know her roommate. She might be just as bad as Howard is, right? There's a lot of ifs here. And I try, as a strong, independent woman, I trust her judgment that this isn't just to be mean to her roommates.
Just don't wear the eye patch.
Seriously. I love how he turns around and he's like, they're both dead to me. Well, Lisa's going to be sad about that. Hello.
Well, and you're back alive. Now the group is all well again.
Yeah.
So now we're at the ending. So Howard is calling Lisa, the roommate, in the same fashion as he did with Stephanie. And again, his mom is making a brisket. And then there's a news report out that the accident with the Mars rover made a huge discovery. Life on Mars. And the look on Howard's face, because in the report they're like, and we'll never know how this happened. And he's like, son of a bitch.
Throwing one more point towards Howard here. That is a strong case of Ryan's luck, that in order to stay clear of danger, of trouble, I will likely miss out on a huge discovery or being credited. Just big Ryan's luck here. Yeah. I think that works.
Nice. And that ends the episode, but it does not end our IQ points. I have one final IQ point.
Final one.
I wanted to know if this coincided with real discoveries. Because I remember this was around the time where they kind of found some sort of evidence. I kind of remember hearing in the news, so I wasn't sure if they were aligning this with the same thing.
Yeah.
So, is this around the time that real scientists discovered life on Mars? And in a nutshell, the answer is no. So they made this up for the show. Because technically they still have not discovered life on Mars. So, but rewinding back a little bit, based on the timeline, Howard could have been working on either rover's Spirit or Opportunity. These were twin rovers sent to Mars in 2003 for a specific objective of finding evidence of water on Mars. Both rovers did find evidence of past water on Mars in 2004, but no actual life evidence.
Hmm.
Spirit ceased transmitting data in 2010, and Opportunity gave its last transmission in June of 2018 and was pronounced deceased in February of 2019. So the rovers made some great discoveries, but not the life that was mentioned in the episode. So if you kind of put those together with the show, it didn't happen.
And the show doesn't say what type of evidence of life. And I remember the big thing with these rovers was just finding signs of water was like a big step in the possibility of life.
It is, yeah.
So I kind of took that as they were looking for water, and then there was something that the show's fictionalizing. But again, in reality, water is kind of the big step, and that's what the show is playing with, even though no actual life or signs of life have been found.
Yeah, I took this kind of literal because I believe in the transcript of the show, they actually did say they found life.
Oh, did they?
Let me double check this actually. Race you there, if that's where you're going.
Oh, I was just checking my email.
Oh, okay. Oh, actually, you know what? You're right. So, in the transcript, it does say that the data which it sent back contains the first clear indications that there may have been life on Mars. So, okay, I was wrong. When I heard that and read it, I interpreted it wrong. I think it was a Freudian slip where I thought like, oh, they said that they did find life on Mars. So I was like, oh, well, they didn't find life on Mars. They found signs of life. So I'm correcting this IQ point on the spot. So this did coincide because it basically means that he was working on Opportunity.
Oh.
So that's what I guess that's kind of what they're hinting at. Since this was in 2008, and then the other one, Spirit. Well, I guess no, because Spirit died in 2010, so he could have been working on either one.
And I think the show is definitely pushing towards more like actual signs of life, but in reality, it's more just traces evidence that there was water. Although, where did that water go? Aliens.
Yep. Well, earlier, before the airing of this episode on July 31st, 2008, NASA's Phoenix Mars lander confirmed the presence of water ice, which is the same elements as the water on Earth. So it didn't stop there. The lander continued to make more discoveries. Phoenix documented the weather and observed snow falling from the clouds and found concentrations of salt that could be nutrients for life, and identified a mineral in the ice called calcium carbonate, suggesting the occasional presence of thawed water.
And heartburn.
So, yeah, this was exciting.
Sorry,
what?
Calcium carbonate, isn't that Tums?
Is it?
Tums active ingredient. Calcium carbonate. Oh.
Well, they found it on Mars. And this was exciting, not because they found actual life, but signs of it. But this wasn't the rover, this was the lander. But it was all around the exact same time. So lots of discoveries on Mars. And they did coincide with the show. So my mistake, glad I caught it before somebody sent in an email saying, Rob, you're a dumbass.
They're going to say that about my 300 million miles. Where the hell did that come from? I don't know. This is a number. I picked it up.
Yeah. All right. Well, now that's the episode.
Awesome.
All right. Now that we've gone through the episode, overall thoughts?
I still liked it a lot. It kind of, I have to see where this relationship's going to go. And you mentioned that Stephanie's going to come back. So I kind of like that. Makes it feel a little bit more than filler. But I did like this notion that Howard is seeing that his actions have ramifications and that he screwed up with the Mars rover, and then he's not going to get credit for the Mars rover finding life or signs
Yep.
of possible life as well. So I kind of like that character perspective, I guess, experience. And, not so much about Sheldon this time, but he had some funny stuff with the lies and interacting. Raj had some funny bits, and, Penny was great too. It's just that scene with Penny made me feel like the romance was dead between them, or, just wasn't there enough to be awkward. And that felt like a little disappointing, but they could pick that back up if needed be.
That's true.
So
Yep.
that's my thoughts.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this episode. Like I said, I really enjoy Stephanie as a character. I like that they're advancing Leonard's relationship status with other people, that he's kind of just, it can't all just be about Penny.
Yeah, that's true.
And let's count all the IQ points then with our powers combined. 1, 2, 8. 8. So with our powers combined, we have 8 IQ points.
That's a good number.
Yeah. And your updated Sheldon tally?
46 to 39. Sheldon just wasn't in this episode enough, but what we know is that a good, strong Sheldon episode can turn this around. And I can identify a lot with him. It's just this episode, Howard's luck and Raj's little jokes picked up the tail end of this.
Nice. All right. Well, that's the episode. Thanks for listening and watching. Please leave us a review on Apple. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Gingerly tap that like button.
Oh, yeah.
Follow us on Instagram at Theoretical Nonsense Pod. Shoot us an email at theoreticalnonsensepod@gmail.com. Again, thank you to our previous emailers. See you next time when we talk about Season 2, Episode 9, The White Asparagus Triangulation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening. This was Theoretical Nonsense, the Big Bang Theory watch-along podcast. No PhD required. Our intro and outro music is by Alex Kroll, and our logo is by John Kim. Thanks for listening. Wipe that shit.
We're out of